Today's random phrase generated was by Chatty. Thank you, Chatty. Italian idiom, il prosciutto sugli occhi, avere il prosciutto sugli occhi, which means to have ham over your eyes. I've never heard of this idiom before. But what it means is to turn a blind eye or to cover yourself from wanting to know like details or not like look at the clear evidence that's there. I honestly feel that those that I admire are the ones that seem to actually turn a blind eye to most of the evidence piling up against them in pursuit of something that they believe is worthy and it merits the effort that they're expending in order to obtain it. And all of the evidence and the reasons the world can come up with still don't justify or don't convince them to move forward, to continue moving forward with what they're pursuing. Avere il prosciutto sugli occhi, all right? To have ham over your eyes, or to turn a blind eye to evidence, clear evidence. And I know that this is really more of like, oftentimes it's used in, I feel, in the context of like a relationship. You're in a horrible relationship, or you know someone who is in a horrible relationship, and it's like, avere il prosciutto sulle mani. Like, you've got ham over your eyes. Look at all the evidence. This person's horrible. They're the psychopath. They're a narcissist. Get out, get out, get out. And they just kind of turn a blind eye to the evidence and just kind of continue naively or even unconsciously or intentionally unconsciously in this relationship. I like to use it more about someone who is stubborn in the pursuit of a goal. They have blinders on, kind of like a horse in a race, because anything that distracts them from the achievement of their goal is something that is not worth their time. Okay, so there's this quote that I love. It says, "Be regular and mundane in your life so that you might be violent and original in your work." You could say that saying has an element of avere prosciutto sulle mani, to have ham over your eyes, or to put up boundaries and blinders towards all the shiny distractions, opportunities, things that get you off your path, because the goal and the achievement of that goal is so much more important than anything that a temporary or short-term satisfaction could provide. And I'm going to tell the story of how I met my wife. Let's see if I can cram this in 3 minutes. So once upon a time, I was a young boy. No, I had gotten this thing in LDS culture. There's this thing called a patriarchal blessing. A patriarchal blessing is something that you get when you feel spiritually ready. And what it does is a patriarch. You meet with the local patriarch, and the patriarch gives you this blessing. And this blessing is called the patriarchal blessing. And what it does is it basically it delineates your lineage, your spiritual lineage, through the Abrahamic covenant. And then what it talks about are characteristics that are found in your genealogy, or characteristics that are found in you, and then foretells of the future in a certain way that if you remain obedient, if you are seeking after a connection and an intimate relationship with Heavenly Father, these things will manifest or unfold in your life. So at the time, my uncle had just gone through a gnarly divorce, and I was wondering, like, how do I know if my wife is going to love me? And how do I going to know that? And so I go to get my patriarchal blessing, and I fast for 24 hours. I'm like a kid. I'm like a 16-year-old kid. I fast for 24 hours, and usually what you do is you fast so that you are receptive to the influences of the Spirit when you are given your patriarchal blessing. But I had read multiple places in the scriptures that people fast so that they can get an answer to their prayers. Okay, so I fasted and I was like, okay, there's 3 things that I want to know or I want to get out of my patriarchal blessing. The first is to know whether or not I'm going to serve a mission. The second is if I'm going to be successful in my profession. And the third is my wife going to love me? And so I remember my mom, I go into my mom's office and I'm still fasting. It's the day before the patriarchal blessing. And my mom says, you know, like, hey, like, how you doing? How you feeling? And I remember being like, yeah, I'm good. I'm fasting right now. And she's like, oh, that's great. Like, okay, so, you know, you feeling ready? And you said, no, I'm fasting so that I can get, you know, these 3 answers to my blessing, in my blessing. If God is smart and all wise, then he can tell me what I need to hear 70 years from now, as well as exactly the answer to these 3 questions. And I'm fasting right now to demonstrate my faith that I'm going to get these answers. And my mom, I remember my mom like, oh, like, hey, sweetheart, like, that's not how like a patriarchal blessing works. Like, you kind of just like fast so that you are open to whatever the Lord has to tell you. And I remember going like, look, I read in the scriptures that if you fast, you will get answers to prayers. These are the questions I have, and I'm going to get these answers in the patriarchal blessing. So the next day I go in and my patriarch was Patriarch Strong, and I'm getting my blessing. And the first thing that he says is that I'm going to serve a mission, which is great. And then I had kind of like a mission paragraph is what I call it. And then I had like a family paragraph where it's talking about, you know, having kids and meeting my wife and all that stuff. And then it kind of like ended. And then it went into what I call my challenges paragraph. And during my challenges paragraph, I was like, wait a second, like, we just got done with the family and the wife paragraph, and I didn't hear that like my wife is gonna love me. And I remember this so distinctly. Right when I was thinking that, in the next paragraph, the patriarch stops in the middle of the blessing. And he says, Carrie, your wife will love you. And I remember, I don't remember this, but my mom says that she remembers opening her eyes like gawking, like, that's exactly what Carrie just asked for yesterday. Like, and then the patriarch goes on and talks about how I will be successful in my profession if I'm, you know, if I have honesty and I have integrity. I don't want to hit my scooter. Ooh. Okay, good. And so I got all the answers to my blessing. And so like, I get my blessing and it's awesome. I get an answer to all of my prayers. And so for the next 4 months, I'm kind of like thinking about this, like, okay, well, you know, I'm 16 years old. It's likely that my wife's already on the earth somewhere. She's probably born. There's a likelihood she's probably very close to my age. So you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to start praying, and I'm going to start praying with getting this question answered. Lord, help me to be receptive spiritually to recognizing when I see my wife, recognizing when I see her, recognize when I see her. So like 4 or 5 months pass, and I go to this like youth church camp, which is called EFY. It was called EFY, especially for youth. And it was like the second day, and everyone was kind of like committing to their cows, which is crush of the week. I know it's so silly jargon. Okay, so I was like, there's this like girl that looked like Taylor Swift back then. She got these like beautiful curls, and she just looked like a spitting image she was like a sister of Taylor Swift, right? So I'm like, that's my cow. I want that girl. She's my crush of the week. I'm going to try to go after her. So like Tuesday happens, or Monday's when it starts. Tuesday, the next day, we're kind of like all talking together outside, and we're on Provo BYU campus. And I'm with my little clique of friends, and this girl, right, Lexi, my wife, she is in her little group of friends, and I see her break away from her group, and she heads towards Jamba Juice, or where Jamba Juice used to be. And so I was like, okay, here's my chance. So I run up to her, and I'm like, hey, you know, like, where are you going? You know, and she responds really quickly, and she said, like, really positively, she's like, oh, I'm just, you know, I'm thirsty. I'm gonna go get a drink at Jamba Juice. And I remember being a total dork and being like, oh, cool. Okay, like, see ya. I turn around and Lexi leaves as I walk back to my group of friends. And my friends are like, I could see them motioning like, you do it, you talk to her. And I was like, yeah, man. Yeah, guys, I talked to her. It was awesome. And as I'm walking back towards my friends, I get this super strong impression, like this super strong spiritual prompting. And it said, turn around and go talk to her again. She's important. And I recognize this feeling because I had this same feeling 4 months ago when I got my patriarchal blessing. And so I followed that prompting. I whipped around, put on the charm, and went and talked to Lexi. We hit it off. She lived down in St. George. I lived in Provo. For those of you who don't know those places, that's like a 3.5 hour drive in the state of Utah. You take like I-15 for 3.5 hours, 260 miles from Provo to St. George. And so it was like a long distance relationship. This is a whole nother story for a whole other time. But to go like, to bring it back to avere prosciutto sugli occhi, to have ham over your eyes or to put up blinders or to turn a blind eye. If I could only describe to you in 5-10 seconds the amount of stubborn determination I put forth in making this relationship work for the next 4.5 to 5 years before we actually get married. There is a mission in there. There's like going down to St. George, driving down to St. George like 50 different times before I leave on my mission. I mean, there's all this crap, crazy stuff. And I look back on it and I was like, man, I was a little pathological in my pursuit to marry Lexi. But you could say that it was because I had Avere Prosciutto Sugli Occhi that allowed me to be molded into the man that ended up one day marrying my wife. So I would have to say that, you know, in most times it's used in a negative context, but I feel that the people that I respect, that I admire, that I want to emulate in my own life are those that intentionally avere avuto prosciutto sugli occhi, and they really just put on blinders and were just stubborn and diligent in their pursuit of something that they believed in, that they thought was worth expending their effort in trying to obtain. And that is where I will leave it for today's random word generator. Is it starting to happen? See my neck? See how red it gets? This happens when I get super passionate and talk about stuff. Anyways, avere prosciutto sugli occhi, to have ham over your eyes.